Welcome back to Hi Fam. I'm Avital and I'm here on a mission to help you to build a strong family culture. And if that sounds good to you, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Leave me your comments and questions below because I try to get to every single one. And today I'm going to be talking about a very kind of gnarly, nasty, unhelpful trend that has been getting stronger and stronger over the past years, especially with the rise of social media. And that difficult, nasty, gnarly trend is polarization or going to extremes, ideas becoming more and more sensationalized, scary, extreme, radical, fundamentalist, and taking ideas all the way to extremes on the left, on the right, in parenting, in marriage, in feminism, whether it's politics, whether it's cultural ideas. The extremities have become very popular. And I think a huge part of that, we don't need to go into this in depth, but a huge part of that is the content that is awarded and rewarded on social media, right? If something is very scary, it's very emotionally tugging, then it gets more and more eyeballs. We watch things more. It's kind of like watching a car crash. You can't look away. It's just so extreme. And so extreme content gets rewarded, and that snowballs, and it creates this kind of vicious cycle where content creators realize they have to be more extreme. They have to be more bold. They have to make bigger promises. They have to make more dogmatic, big, bold, extreme statements to get that kind of visceral reaction. And so it goes on and on. But recently, I've received a few comments about an approach of balance or of wisdom or of the middle road or of holding both sides at once. And I want to read them to you because I'm curious if you feel the same way, that this is something that you're craving and that you're looking for. One person wrote to me, Avital, what I love about your content is that you never take a side just because it's trendy. You somehow hold two truths at the same time, and it makes me feel less crazy for wanting nuance. Or another one who wrote to me, I always feel pulled between gentle parenting world and kids need boundaries world. Your approach is the first one where I feel like I'm allowed to care about feelings and still lead. Or another one who wrote to me about marriage, and she said, the way that you talk about marriage feels so refreshing. Not men are the problem, and not just be a martyr, but real partnership. I've never heard someone explain both sides with so much compassion. One more who wrote, you're the only person I follow who doesn't sound like a spokesperson for one camp. You always make me think instead of just react. Thank you for showing that nuance isn't weakness. So if you two are looking for balance, not extremes, then let's talk more about how we can live in the middle. A long time ago, years ago, I made a podcast called The Radical Middle. And I think it's time to revisit this concept. So I recently saw a phrase, a quote, and I've researched, but I can't find who actually came up with this. When I do, I will certainly share it with you. But the quote was, to be, that I strive to be, radically moderate, not moderately radical. And I want to break this down and explain why I find this very inspiring and why, I'm using it to reground myself and remind myself every time I see content that pushes further and further into a camp. You see, you're going to see content that pushes you to be hardcore trad wife or hardcore gentle parent or hardcore conscious parent or unschooler or all manner of labels that you're supposed to adopt, and then you're supposed to really box yourself in and follow that to a T, or else you're going to get kicked out of the camp. Humans are very afraid of being ostracized, of being shamed, of being kicked out of the group, because we need group acceptance for our very survival. And so if we don't adhere strictly to all of the dictates of whatever group we happen to be a part of, some part of us feels afraid, shamed, like we're not going to actually survive. We're going to be kicked out. We're going to be left to the wolves by ourselves with no protection, with no community around us. And the online world very much kind of taps in and plays into that, right? I sell courses online. I sell a membership online. And so I've taken lots of business courses on how to sell things. And many of the psychological kind of tricks that they teach you and that they encourage you to do on these online courses is to tap into tribalism, to tap into an identity, to make people feel like you're in this group, right? You're a gentle parent because you do A, B, C, and D. This is part of your identity. Or to give kind of big, bold promises promises without any nuance, like this will 100% transform your child's behavior, save your marriage, etc., etc. And I get it. We all have to play that game when we're, selling, when we're online, when we're trying to get a message across, right? Because we're competing against others who are using those tools, and they're very effective tools because they tap into our very, primal need for belonging, need to be part of the tribe, need to be in the in crowd, need to be accepted, right? So it makes a ton of sense. The trouble is that life isn't like that. Humans aren't like that. There's complexity, there's nuance, there's two sides to every coin. There are dangers on the extremes of anything, right? If you go too far in any direction, you start to be overly dogmatic, overly zealous. You start to miss very important things because you've got your blinders on, you've got tunnel vision, and you're only seeing this one way of doing things. You start to suppress and deny entire parts of yourself. And if you go too gung-ho on anything, I think that you are losing out. So what does this quote mean? Rather than being moderately radical, in other words, I'm a radical, I'm a, unschooler, or I'm, a hardcore feminist, and in my marriage, everything is 50-50. Or I'm a conservative trad wife, and I only take care of the home and the babies, and I am ultra feminine, and I never work outside the home, right? Any kind of doctorate, any ideology that you subscribe to. Many of us feel like, oh, I'm only moderately radical. Like I should be more hardcore in this. I should be doing better in this ideology. There's more, I could be a better trad wife, or a better gentle parent, or a better whatever, fill in the blank. Okay. And that means that we're striving for something pretty extreme, potentially pretty closed off, pretty prescribed, predetermined, right? It's kind of predestined of how we're supposed to behave and how we're supposed to handle every situation. But maybe we're failing. We're not radical enough. We're not extreme enough. So we're just moderately radical. Okay. We're not really doing it well. Okay. But to be radically moderate is to do the opposite, is to say, I am choosing a middle path, a middle road. I see the extremes on either side of the bank, and I keep steering my boat to the middle. Okay, if I veer too far in one direction, I bump up against the edge, and then I correct by veering in the other direction and eventually finding equilibrium and finding balance in the middle. I'm not going to go too far to one extreme because I know that there are dangers there, or too far to the other extreme because there's dangers there. Right? It's Dr. Jordan Peterson who I learned the idea from, where basically almost all extremes, whether it's in politics or in religion or in relationships or in psychology, can kind of be categorized between order and chaos. Right? And if you go too far in the direction of order, you come up against all sorts of pathologies there, right? Even think psychiatric pathologies, like OCD is a pathology of order, right? Where I need things to be too ordered, right? I'm anxious, or I'm, agitated about the order of things. Whereas you can go too far in the other direction and you can become too chaotic, right? Maybe schizophrenia would be a psychiatric disorder of chaos, right? Where things are all over the place. There is no order. Everything is a blur, is a mess, is a soup, right? And most of us, all of us really need to try and find the psychological health, which is in the middle between these two banks, that takes the positive, healthy sides of something orderly and takes the positive, healthy sides of something chaotic. So what are the positive, healthy sides of something orderly? Would be chronology, would be making sense, would having rules, having values, having clarity. And the positive side of something chaotic would be the creativity, spontaneity, right? Those types of things. Let me bring this down to a more practical level where we can really understand, why this is so relevant. If you want to build a strong family culture, you want to build, for example, a strong marriage. Okay. I talk a lot about marriage. If you think kind of radically, okay, even moderately radically, then you think things like men are the problem, or women are the problem. Or you think things like marriage is about keeping score, power must be redistributed from one to the other. You think tit for tat thinking. You think, it's unfair that women always take on the mental load, or men have nothing to gain from marriage. They should just opt out, right? But a radically moderate, someone who is radically moderate, someone who is committed to wise, balanced thinking is going to think things like, men and women are different and they're equally valuable. So how do we straddle that middle ground of respecting our differences as two different sexes, but also valuing what each one of us brings to the table so we can create complementary, harmonious cooperation and collaboration rather than that radicalized, polarized extremity of competition. Okay. You might think something like healthy marriage requires partnership, maturity, shared responsibility. You might think about interdependence, right? Versus thinking independence or dependence in a more radical idea, right? So you'd learn if you were thinking in a radically moderate way, in a way that keeps grounding you back to wisdom, to holding two truths at once, to the fact that, yes, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You would think, marriage isn't about men versus women. Marriage is about us as a team versus any challenges that come our way. And you would start to think in this moderate, middle ground, balanced approach that accepts differences and accepts that we, all have our different needs and our different psychologies and our different resources, and we would work together towards the goal. If you think in more radicalized terms, right? If you're moderately radical, if you're polarized and extremist, you're always going to be leaning in one direction at the detriment of the other direction. You're always going to be weighing everything out towards women or towards men, for example. And then you'll be out of balance and off kilter, and you'll never find that kind of equilibrium, that balance, that harmony that I'm talking about, the wisdom that I think many of us are searching for in today's day and age, right? Let's give another example from, say, gentle parenting, from the gentle parenting world, okay? There are, radical parenting ideas that go very extreme, say, towards empathy, okay? Where everything is about empathy, everything is about softness and warmth and love and acceptance and holding space and, being there for our children and seeing them and meeting them where they're at and validating their emotions and always, always just accepting them. The radical gentle parenting sphere is about radical acceptance of your child. Whatever they feel, whatever they do, whatever their behaviors, you're always just going to dig deeper and understand why they behave that way. And you're going to, become a detective of what's the core need and try to meet that need. And it's about kids should never feel upset. We should meet their needs. We should be ever responsive to every single emotion that comes up, right? Any kind of boundary is perceived as trauma. Right? Oh, you set a boundary or you said no. They shouldn't hear the word no. They shouldn't feel that they're, limited. You shouldn't decide for your child. Who are you to decide for your child? They're a sovereign being separate from you, right? Negative feelings leave a long-lasting, dangerous, damaging effect on the child. And so we should always soothe. We should always constantly soothe and avoid triggers, right? We should give trigger warnings. We should create safe spaces. Everything should be very, very soft and cushy. That's one radical approach to parenting. And it came as a reaction to another radical approach to parenting, which was the authoritarian approach, which was all about boundaries. It was all about standards and expectations. It says that strictness equals love, right? That feelings are dangerous to growth. Just shut them down. You don't need to feel them. You just need to be obedient, right? And both of those are radical. Both of those are very extreme, very polarized, very opposite from each other. And the fact is that both of them have kernels of truth that we need to meet in the middle. We need to say yes, and we need to take from both of them. From the first, from the, say, gentle parenting world, we need to take the warmth, the acceptance, the love. Those are good things. Okay. We need to offer our children empathy and connection. Yes, children absolutely need warmth. They need support. Let's just call it support, right? And from the authoritarian parenting, we need to take expectations. Children do need expectations. They need standards. They need someone who believes in them and who coaches them up and who helps them to get over their worst impulses, right? So radically moderate thinking would say empathy is connection. That's good. We need that. And standards are guidance. And that's good. We need that too. Someone who is radically moderate is able to say yes to both of those things and not to just sever off an entirely important part of the relationship. Okay. We would say that kids thrive when they are both seen and led by their parents. Okay. That emotions are valid, but behavior still needs to be held accountable for. Okay. So, in the radically moderate approach, the radical middle, the parent who is wise and balanced says, love without boundaries is unsafe. It's chaotic. That's chaos, right? But boundaries without love is cold. That's order. Too much order, too much chaos, and we get into pathology. We need to find the middle, right? The radical middle. Okay. One more example here. Okay. We're going to talk about self-care versus sacrifice. Okay. There is moderately radical thinking that is always putting self-care first. It's all about me, me, me. This is the me, me, me generation. This is the 5-hour skincare routine every morning. This is talking about motherhood as slavery and bondage, and it's so unfair what it does to you, and you're such a victim, and oh no, you know, stretch marks, oh, sleepless nights. How will you ever survive it? It's terrible. You shouldn't even do it. Why sacrifice yourself? Self-care is the thing. Self-care is what it's all about. Your life is actually about self-love. Self-love is what's going to give your life meaning. This is Miley Cyrus saying, I can buy myself flowers. I can hold my own hand. I only need me, and I only need to take care of me, and then my life will be joyful and meaningful. And that is all that matters, is how I feel. My pleasure, my hedonistic gains, my materialism, my consumerism, my self-care, my look, my brand, my face card, right? That is what matters, and that is what I need to invest in, and that is a route to a meaningful and good life. Okay, put yourself first always. Your needs are what matters most. Follow your feelings. If you don't feel it, don't do it. Only do what you're passionate about, right? If you give too much, you've lost yourself. You shouldn't give too much to others, okay? And that radical self-care came as a response to an approach of radical sacrifice, which was the opposite of that, which was all about, you know, if you take time for yourself, you're selfish. Okay, you shouldn't care what you feel like. You should always put others first. You should sacrifice yourself at the altar of your child, right? Good parenting is disheveled parenting. Good moms don't have time to work out. Oh, you know, it's the self-sacrifice competition of the moms who are saying, oh, I didn't sleep last night, and I haven't worked out in a year, and I haven't taken a shower since Tuesday because I'm just giving of myself. I don't care what I look like. My life doesn't matter anymore. I give myself up to my child. It's martyrdom, right? And the radical moderate thinking rejects both of these approaches. It says, wait, if you focus too much on your self-care, then that becomes, you know, narcissism. It becomes anxiety. It becomes inhibition. It becomes that you're only obsessed with your image and what you look like, and navel gazing. And it's a fast route to depression and anxiety, and it's not going to help anyone, and it's not fair on your children, and it's not a good path to meaning. But self-care isn't indulgence. You need to take care of yourself and be healthy and feel good in your skin and look good and glow up and all of those good things. That's fine. That's important. But taken to the extreme, you take that to the radical end, and your life becomes, you know, a never-ending treadmill, that hedonistic treadmill that you can never get off, to always be upgrading yourself and always be up-leveling and always be glowing up and never be giving of yourself to other people, which ultimately is one of the main sources of meaning in our lives. So it says self-care isn't indulgence. It's maintenance. It's important. You need self-care. You've got to maintain yourself. And also, sacrifice isn't martyrdom. Sacrifice is meaning. When we sacrifice of ourselves, when we give of ourselves, when we pour of ourselves into our children, our life, our marriage, our husband, our projects, then that gives us meaning. That pays us back tenfold. And a healthy family needs healthy parents. So you've got to take care of yourself. Okay. But sustainable sacrifice, if you want to sacrifice yourself, give of yourself to your children and to your family, you require regular refueling. Okay. I talk about mathematical self-care, right? Just like if you took care of a car, you would expect to have to refuel it. You're taking care of your body. That's like your vehicle, and you've got to refuel it. That's not selfish. That's necessary. So we're not looking for the mom who becomes a floor rag, right? And lets everybody walk all over her and never takes care of herself and is exhausted and disheveled and has a nervous breakdown at 43 because she just gave too much for too long. That's not what we're looking for, right? But we're also not looking for the mom who's in the selfie, me, indulgent, main character syndrome era of her life, who is all about herself and uses her kids as props on social media just to get clout and clicks. We're looking for the balance. We're looking for the radical meaning, the radical middle, Freudian slip, but it was appropriate. Radical meaning that is found in balance, that is found in wisdom, in nuance, in saying yes to both. Yes, I take care of myself. I care what I look like. I get dressed in the morning. I show up to my day. I take a nap when I need it. I get help when I need it. Yes to all of that. And yes to giving of myself, because giving of myself is what provides meaning in my life. I want to pour of myself into others. Both things are true, and I can straddle that broad bridge of both of those things at once and not go down in these radical rabbit holes that are deranging. Okay. So we should not be moderately radical. We should be radically moderate. The world is rewarding extremes. Okay. But families, strong relationships are built in the middle. Strong relationships are built when you can say yes and when you can do both, when you can have feminine and masculine, when you can have self-care and self-sacrifice, when you can have gentle, warm, supportive parenting and authority, boundaries, standards, and expectations. We've got to do both. We've got to hold both all in one. Okay. Extremes might get applause and clicks and virality online. Okay. But moderation is where we build legacies, is where people feel they can depend on us, they can rely on us. There's something real here. There's a foundation. Okay. If you think about building a home, you can't build a home tilted to one side. You've got to build a foundation that is strong all around, supported, sturdy, right? So it really works in both of those areas of our life. Okay. So I want to ask you if you have found yourself being radicalized anywhere. Okay. Anywhere in parenting. I did in the early years of my parenting. I was, very radicalized down, let's say, the organic health route, okay, that became extreme, or down the homeschooling or unschooling route, or being completely screen free, or being completely sugar free, or being go hung on gentle parenting, or being go hung on feminism and, independence, or 50-50 division of labor, or all sorts of things that actually ended up being very destabilizing in my home. They didn't help me to see the nuance and the truth that actually I need both things. Okay. That actually maybe, yes, we also need clear boundaries, rules, expectations, not just warmth and holding space and, validation and gentleness. Or that, yes, my children can be self-led learners and we can maintain their curiosity and we can do creative projects, but also they need to know how to read and write and do math no matter what. Okay. Or yes, me and my husband can be egalitarian and he can change diapers and I can work and build a business, and all of that is great. And also, it's totally fine for me to embrace a more traditional approach to my home, or enjoy homemaking, or have completely different needs from him that don't always need to be matched and tracked 50-50 in a scorecard, right? Those things are good. Recently, someone said to me, I can't tell where you are politically or religiously. Like, you don't fit into any neat box. And I was like, great. I take that as such a compliment. That means I'm an independent thinker. That means that I take the issues on issue by issue. That means I see complexity and nuance. That means I can argue both sides and I can understand them. Sure, I have opinions. Ultimately, I'll vote one way or another. I'll make decisions one way or another in my home, with my feet, with my dollars, with whatever decisions that we make. But the fact that we can, hold more than one idea at once, see the wisdom in more than one idea at once, dissect apart what works, what doesn't work, run it through our own filter, be critical thinkers, which is something I teach inside of the studio, not only to us adults, but how we teach that to our children as well, right? I take that as a compliment. And it was interesting because she said, this is a student of mine inside my membership, the studio. And she said, I always felt like if I wasn't hardcore, if I wasn't radical in one approach, then that meant that I was weak, that I wasn't a true believer, that I wasn't a good follower, that I wasn't really part of the movement, that I was fragmenting it. But this gave her food for thought. She said, 1 minute, maybe I don't need to tick all the boxes for some label, right? For some, ideology, but rather I need to pick and choose what works for me and leave the rest, which has always been my philosophy. Pick and choose what works for you, leave the rest. So if you love some parenting guru or some marriage guru or anything, a health guru, a religious guru, a political guru, whatever, people that you follow online, people that you follow in real life, you can love 80% of what they do, or 60%, or take 10%. I have people that I follow that I can't possibly follow their whole entire, canon of work, because it would take my whole day up, right? Like fitness people, or a sex coach, or a money coach, whatever, all these different people that you follow. And it could balloon and fill your entire day, but you could take 10% of it, right? Take bodybuilding, for example, okay? I love lifting weights and I think it's such a great thing to do, but I'm not going to become a bodybuilder. I'm not a radical. I'm radically moderate. I do my 45 minutes, 4 times a week, or whatever it is, and that's my weightlifting. It's not going to become my whole entire thing. I'm not going to become Mrs. Universe. I'm not going to become the best in the world. I'm not going to bodybuild massive muscle. I'm going to maintain and expand my muscle a little bit. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's radically moderate. It's not moderately radical. Okay. I'm not failing at becoming a bodybuilder. I'm succeeding at being a moderate weightlifter. Okay. So it's very, very important to define for yourself. You're not failing in becoming more radical or more extreme or more polarized or more hardcore in whatever philosophy or ideology you're looking for. If you actually decide, no, my goal is to succeed at the balance, is to succeed in the middle, is to not veer so far into order or so far into chaos that it becomes a pathology. Okay, now I know this was a little bit complex to follow. I hope that I have clarified for you what I mean by this. And I hope that it gives you some level of clarity for yourself. Like, what are those areas where I'm actually not trying to be a radical? I'm trying to maintain balance, harmony, and stay in the middle and stay, I don't have to pick a side. I don't have to go to extremes. I can say yes and. Like, yes, I love the warmth and the support of gentle parenting. And I also love the boundaries and the standards of authoritarian parenting. And that's why, I combine them, for example. Ask yourself, are there areas where you lost that balance, where you were going to a more radical place, and how you can bring it back to the center? And I would love to hear your comments below. Is this something that you connect to? Do you look for a more nuanced approach? What areas in your life have you felt have not been nuanced, have been radicalized, have been gone too far to extremes, polarizing, and you're ready to bring them back to something harmonious and more sustainable and more effective and more manageable, perhaps long term, right? More realistic. Often the middle is more realistic because it balances and it isn't so out of whack, right? I would love to hear that in the comments below, and keep your questions coming. You've got questions for me about mindset, about marriage, about parenting, about building a strong family culture. That is exactly the topics that I cover all the time. So make sure to leave those in the comments below. I will read them. I will incorporate them into my future videos. And meanwhile, it would mean the world to me if you hit subscribe, if you hit the notification bell, if you hit the like button, if you leave your comment below, and of course, if you share this with just one other person who you think might find it interesting and use it to start a conversation of your own. All right, much, much love. And I will be reading those comments in short order. I'll see you in the next one. Meanwhile, keep on living that high fam life.